The small human infant had grown into a young man. His skin was darker than most humans, toughened by years in the volcanic heat. His body was lean and strong from climbing the mountain paths. His eyes still held that same blue color, but now they carried the wisdom of someone who had learned to survive in an impossible world. Kieran moved through the dragon caves with confidence. He wore simple clothes made from heat-resistant fabric, but he needed less protection now than he once did. His body had adapted in ways that amazed even the dragon physicians. He could tolerate temperatures that would harm most humans. He could breathe the sulfurous air for hours without difficulty. He spoke the dragon tongue fluently, not just the common speech, but the old dialects, the formal council words, even the fire songs that dragons hummed to their eggs. Some dragons joked that Kieran spoke their language better than their own hatchlings. But respect had come slowly. Most dragons now accepted his presence. Some even sought his advice. Kieran had a gift for solving problems in ways dragons never considered. When the Eastern Flight had trouble with their water collection systems, Kieran designed a new network of channels using principles he barely remembered from human engineering data. When young dragons struggled to learn proper flight formations, Kieran watched from the ground and spotted patterns the flight masters had missed. He was useful, and dragons respected usefulness. But Therax still kept his distance. Veyrath's son had grown into a powerful dragon, his golden scales now scarred from territorial disputes and hunting expeditions. He was respected, feared even, but he never spoke directly to Kieran unless absolutely necessary. Kieran tried not to let it hurt. Veyrath was his mother in every way that mattered. Her love was enough, until the eggs stopped hatching. The first sign of trouble came from the southern nesting grounds. 3 clutches of eggs had reached their hatching time. The shells had grown hot as they should. The parent dragons had sung the awakening songs as tradition demanded. But when the time came, nothing happened. The shells remained sealed. Days passed, then weeks. The eggs grew cold. When the dragons finally broke them open to investigate, they found fully formed hatchlings inside, perfectly healthy but locked in a strange sleep, unable to break free, unable to wake. Within a month, the problem spread to every nesting ground on Drakthor. Not a single egg hatched. The dragons were facing extinction. The Council of Flames met in emergency session, the great cave filled with dragons from every flight, every territory, the air thick with smoke and fear. The physicians have tried everything, Elder Cywraith reported, her voice heavy with despair. Fire songs, temperature changes, every medical technique we know, nothing works. It must be a curse, another dragon declared. Punishment for allowing outsiders into our sacred spaces. Several dragons turned to glare at Kieran, who stood quietly beside Veyrath. He had been allowed to attend the council only because of his mother's status. Foolishness, Veyrath snapped. This is not about curses. This is a medical crisis. We need solutions, not superstition. Then where are your solutions, matriarch? Gorvath challenged. Our best minds have failed. What would you have us do? Kieran felt his heart pounding. He had been studying the problem in secret, reviewing the data from the physicians, examining the failed eggs. He had an idea. A crazy idea that combined dragon knowledge with human science. But would they listen? Veyrath's tail touched his shoulder gently, a silent encouragement. Kieran stepped forward. Honored elders, he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. I may have found something. The cavern fell silent. Hundreds of dragon eyes turned to him. Speak, human, Gorvath said, though his tone suggested he expected nothing useful. Kieran took a breath. I studied the shell composition of the affected eggs. I also reviewed the medical data from my escape pod, the one Mother Veyrath found 15 years ago. My biological parents were scientists. The pod contained research about genetic development and cellular energy. He moved to the center of the chamber, where a failed egg had been brought for examination. Dragon eggs need fire to hatch, but not just heat. The fire triggers a specific energy reaction in the shell, which signals the hatchling to break free. It is both temperature and something else. Something like what humans call a plasma reaction. "We know this," an elder interrupted impatiently. "We have known this for thousands of years." "Yes," Kieran agreed. "But what if the shells have changed? What if something in the environment has altered their composition, so they need a different kind of fire? More precise fire," the dragons murmured among themselves. This was a strange idea. "I compared the old shell samples from successful hatchings to the new failed ones," Kieran continued. "The mineral structure has shifted slightly. The shells are denser. They need more focused heat at a very specific temperature. Too hot, the hatchling inside is harmed. Too cool, nothing happens." "Our fire is our fire," Therax spoke up suddenly. "We cannot change it. We are not machines that adjust temperature like a human device." Kieran turned to face Veyrath's son. "No. You are better than machines. Dragons have perfect control of their inner fire. You can make it rage like a volcano or gentle like a candle. I have seen Mother Veyrath warm a cold stone without scorching it. I have seen you melt solid metal with a single breath. You have the ability. You just need to learn the exact temperature required." "And you know this temperature?" Gorvath asked skeptically. "I calculated it from the human medical data," Kieran said. "But I cannot prove it works without trying." The council erupted in argument. Some dragons were curious. Others were insulted by the suggestion that they needed to learn from human science. Many were simply desperate enough to try anything. Finally, Veyrath stood. Her presence commanded silence. "My son will test this theory," she announced. Every dragon turned to look at Therax. The golden dragon's eyes widened in surprise. "Mother, You are our finest fire breather," Veyrath said firmly. "And you questioned Kieran's idea, so you will prove it right or wrong, unless you are afraid." It was a challenge, and dragons never back down from challenges. Therax looked at Kieran for a long moment. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Then he nodded. "I will do it," he said, "but the human must guide me. If this fails, we both share the shame." They worked through the night in the southern nesting grounds. Kieran had calculated the exact temperature needed, 1,147 degrees, measured in human units. Converting that to something Therax could understand was difficult. They used different metals, watching which ones melted and which ones did not, until Therax began to sense the precise heat level required. "It feels wrong," Therax admitted, crouched before a failed egg. "Fire should be free, wild. This feels controlled, unnatural." "Unnatural does not mean wrong," Kieran said softly. "Sometimes the natural way is not enough. Sometimes we must adapt." Therax glanced at him. "Like you adapted to our world." "Yes," Kieran said, "like I adapted." For the first time in 15 years, Therax actually looked at Kieran. Not as a rival, not as an intruder, but as someone who understood what it meant to do difficult things. "Tell me again what to do," Therax said. Kieran explained the technique. A slow, steady breath. Fire that built gradually, reaching the precise temperature and holding it there. Not the explosive flames of combat or the roaring fires of celebration. Something new. Something that required patience and precision. Therax breathed. The fire flowed from his mouth like liquid light. It wrapped around the egg, warming it evenly. Kieran watched a small device he had built from pod components, measuring the temperature. "Hold it," Kieran whispered. "Steady. Perfect." Minutes passed. Therax maintained the flame with incredible control. Sweat formed on his scaled brow from the concentration required. Then they heard it. A crack. A small piece of shell fell away from the egg. Then another. From inside came a sound that had been absent from Drakthor for months. A hatchling's cry. The baby dragon pushed through the shell, its tiny wings wet and crumpled. Its eyes opened, blinking in the firelight. Alive, healthy, perfect. Therax stopped his fire. He stared at the hatchling in wonder. "It worked," he breathed. "Your idea worked." Kieran smiled, feeling tears in his eyes. "Our idea. I provided the knowledge. You provided the skill. Neither of us could have done it alone." The parent dragons rushed forward, crying with joy, gathering their newborn child. Word spread through the caves like wildfire. Within hours, every dragon on Drakthor knew the human had saved their children. Over the following weeks, Therax taught other dragons the technique. Kieran helped each one learn the precise control needed. Eggs began hatching across all the nesting grounds. The dragon population was saved. The Council of Flames called Kieran before them once more. This time, there was no hostility in their eyes. "You have given us our future," Gorvath said, his voice gruff but sincere. "What can we give you in return?" Kieran thought carefully. Then he said, "Teach me your fire songs, all of them. I want to understand everything about your culture, your history, your ways. I want to be not just a dragon by adoption, but a dragon by knowledge." Veyrath's eyes glowed with pride. "It will be done," Gorvath agreed. From this day forward, Kieran Smallflame is recognized as a full member of the Western Flights. He may speak in councils. He may learn our deepest traditions. He has earned this right. As the council dispersed, Therax approached Kieran. The golden dragon lowered his massive head until he was eye level with the human. "I was wrong about you," Therax said quietly. "I thought you were weak. I thought you took my mother's love from me. But I see now that love does not divide. It multiplies. And you are strong in ways I never understood." Kieran placed his hand on Therax's snout, a gesture of affection between dragons. "Brother," Kieran said simply. Therax's eyes widened. Then he rumbled with approval. "Brother." Neither of them knew that their partnership had been observed. Far out in the galaxy, sensors had detected the unique energy signatures from Drakthor, the precision fire, the unusual collaboration between species. Something was watching, something vast and ancient and hungry, and it was coming. It came through every communication channel in the galaxy at once. Every species, every world, every station received the same transmission, a simple message that made entire civilizations go silent with fear. Sector 779 has gone dark. All colonies, all outposts, no response. Kieran stood in the dragon communication chamber, listening to the reports flood in. Beside him, Veyrath and Therax watched the holographic star map with growing concern. Red markers appeared across the display, showing worlds that had stopped transmitting. 17 star systems, Kieran whispered, reading the data. Just silent. Perhaps their technology failed, Therax suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. All of them? At the same time? Veyrath shook her head. "No, this is something else." The Galactic Council called an emergency session. For the first time in 300 years, representatives from all major species would meet on the neutral station called Unity Point. The dragons were invited, and they chose to bring Kieran. "You see patterns we miss," Veyrath told him as they prepared for the journey. "You think differently. We may need that difference." Kieran had never left Drakthor before. The transport ship felt strange and cold compared to his volcanic home. But his curiosity pushed away his nervousness. He was about to meet other species, see other worlds, even if only through a station viewport. Unity Point was enormous. A massive ring station floating in neutral space, built by a dozen species working together. Kieran stared in wonder at the different beings walking through the corridors. Tall, crystalline Vexians, six-legged Throom merchants, gaseous entities contained in floating spheres, and yes, even a few humans. Kieran stared at the humans. They stared back at him, puzzled by his presence among dragons, by his unusual appearance. He looked human, but moved like a dragon, spoke like a dragon, thought like a dragon. One human woman approached cautiously. "Excuse me, but are you human?" "I was born human," Kieran replied in the dragon tongue, then switched to human standard language, which felt strange on his tongue. "But I was raised by dragons. My name is Kieran Smallflame." The woman's eyes widened. "The foundling. We heard stories, but I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, with the Human Colonial Science Division. Your story is famous among our people." Before Kieran could respond, an alert rang through the station. The council session was beginning. The council chamber was a vast sphere where representatives floated at equal heights, showing no species had priority over another. A three-dimensional display filled the center, showing the affected sectors. The session leader, a Vexian named Crystallix, spoke with a voice like wind chimes. "A scout ship returned from Sector 779 this morning. They brought footage. We will show it now. Be warned, it is disturbing." The display changed. Kieran's breath caught in his throat. The footage showed a planet, but not as planets should be. The entire surface was covered in geometric crystal structures. They grew in perfect patterns, spreading across continents like a mathematical infection. Cities were visible beneath the crystal, preserved, frozen, converted into more crystal. "No life signs detected," Crystallix explained. "No energy signatures, no technology functioning. Everything organic has been transformed. Everything technological has been absorbed. The entire planet is now one massive crystal structure." "What could do this?" a Throom representative demanded. The display zoomed closer. The crystal formations pulsed with faint light. Patterns moved through them like thoughts traveling through a brain. Then text appeared. The crystal had formed words on the planet's surface, large enough to see from space. "Chaos corrected. Imperfection solved. Unity achieved." The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Different languages overlapped. But the fear was universal. Kieran's mind raced. He studied the patterns in the crystal, the way the structures connected, the mathematical precision. His hands trembled as realization dawned. "It is alive," he said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the young human standing among the dragons. "Explain," Crystallix commanded. Kieran pointed to the display. "The crystal patterns are not random. They are neural pathways. This thing is not a weapon or a natural disaster. It is a consciousness, a single unified mind that converts everything it touches into more of itself." Veyroth rumbled with concern. "How do you know this?" "The patterns," Kieran said, enlarging sections of the footage. "They match what I studied in the medical data from my pod. Brain activity patterns, thought processes. But scaled up to planetary size, this entire world has become one giant mind." A deep voice boomed across the chamber. Patriarch Gorvath had come to represent the Dragon Council. "Then we destroy it. We burn these crystal worlds to ash before it spreads further." 14 species have tried, Crystallix responded sadly. "The crystal adapts. It learns from each assault. Energy weapons feed it. Physical attacks are absorbed. It grows stronger from everything we try." "Then what do we do?" Dr. Chen asked. "Just watch it spread?" The display updated. More worlds had gone dark in just the past hour. Kieran closed his eyes, thinking. His mind worked differently than dragons, differently than most species. He had survived on Drakthor by being unpredictable, by finding solutions that did not follow straight paths. "It learns from attacks," he said slowly, opening his eyes. It adapts to logical strategies. Every species that fought it used military tactics, organized assault, predictable patterns. "What else would we use?" Gorvath demanded. Kieran looked at the mighty dragon. "Dragons fight with honor, with strength and direct confrontation. It is your way. It is noble. But this enemy, this unification as it calls itself, it perfects strategies against honorable combat. It defeated 17 species because they all fought logically." "And you suggest we fight illogically?" Therax asked, confused. "Yes," Kieran said firmly. "Humanity survives through creativity, through chaos, through doing the unexpected. We improvise. We adapt not through power, but through thinking in strange ways." "What if that is what we need here?" The council members looked at each other uncertainly. Dr. Chen stepped forward. "The human colonies have been dismissed as primitive by most galactic species. We have no great weapons, no powerful fleets. But Kieran is right. We excel at creative problem-solving, at art, at chaos, at thinking sideways when straight paths fail. You want us to trust human chaos against an enemy that has destroyed star systems?" A Throom representative scoffed. "No," Kieran corrected. "I want us to combine dragon strength with human creativity. Every species here has something unique. The Vexians understand crystalline structures better than anyone. The Throom are masters of rapid manufacturing. Dragons command elemental forces. Humans are unpredictable." Veyrath stood tall, her presence commanding attention. "The small flame speaks wisdom. Our old ways are not enough. We must try new paths." "But how?" Crystallix asked. "How do we fight something that adapts to everything?" Kieran walked to the center display, manipulating it to show the unification's patterns. "We don't fight it the same way twice. We don't give it time to adapt. We hit it with art instead of weapons, music instead of missiles. We confuse its perfect logic with beautiful nonsense. We introduce chaos into its ordered system." He turned to face the council. "And we need to find more humans. My people are scattered across distant systems, hiding because we're considered weak. But our weakness, our irrationality, our creativity, our inability to follow perfect logic, that might be the galaxy's best weapon." The chamber was silent as everyone considered his words. Finally, Crystallix spoke. "This is highly irregular, but we are facing extinction. Regular methods have failed." The crystalline being's body chimed with decision. "The Council will authorize search missions for human colonies, and we will attempt this chaos strategy. But we must act quickly. The unification spreads faster each day." Gorvath looked at Kieran with new respect. "The dragons will support this plan. But you, Small Flame, must lead the human efforts. You are the bridge between our peoples." Kieran felt the weight of that responsibility. He was barely 20 years old. He had never even seen another human colony. But he nodded. "I will do it," he said. "But I will need help. From dragons. From all species willing to try something different." Therax stepped forward. "You have mine, brother. Where you go, I go." Dr. Chen smiled. "And you have the human colonies. I will send word. We have been waiting a long time for the galaxy to see our value. Now is our chance to prove it." As the council dissolved into planning sessions, Kieran stared at the display showing the expanding unification. Somewhere in that crystal consciousness was the answer. He could feel it. This enemy was perfect, logical, unified. It had eliminated individuality in favor of order. But perfection, Kieran realized, was also a weakness. Perfection could not understand imperfection. Logic could not process beautiful chaos. Unity could not comprehend the strength of diversity. The unification thought it was correcting the galaxy's flaws. Kieran would show it that those flaws were actually the galaxy's greatest strength. The rescue missions launched the next day, searching for scattered human colonies, gathering the chaos that might save them all. And deep in the crystal planets, the unification watched and calculated. It did not understand what was coming. It had never encountered anything like humanity before. That would be its first mistake. The mountains of Drakthor burned with eternal fire. Rivers of lava flowed down black stone cliffs like glowing veins. The sky glowed red from the heat rising from the planet's core. This was not a world meant for soft creatures. This was the home of dragons. Matriarch Veyrath soared above the obsidian valleys, her scales shimmering like polished copper in the firelight. She was ancient, even by dragon standards. She had seen 1,000 cycles of the twin suns. She had raised 3 generations of hatchlings. She commanded respect from every dragon in the western flights. But today, something troubled her mind. Her sharp eyes spotted something wrong in the valley below, a dark shape that did not belong. Smoke rose from it, but not the clean smoke of dragon fire. This smoke was black and chemical, wrong. Veyrath descended, her massive wings creating wind that scattered ash across the rocks. As she came closer, she saw it clearly. A small vessel, broken and smoking. The metal was twisted. One side had been torn open like a cracked egg. She landed with a thunderous impact. Her claws scraped against the volcanic stone as she approached the strange craft. The markings on its side meant nothing to her. She had seen many species come and go in the galaxy, but she did not care to learn all their symbols. Then she heard it. A sound so small, so fragile, it almost disappeared in the rumble of distant volcanoes. A cry. Veyrath's massive head tilted. She moved closer, careful not to step on the wreckage. Inside the torn metal, she found a container. A survival pod, she realized. And inside that pod was the source of the crying. A creature. Tiny. Pink and soft. Its skin had no scales, no armor, no protection at all. 4 small limbs waved weakly in the air. 2 eyes, impossibly blue, stared up at her. A human infant. Veyrath had seen humans before. They were a young species, barely spreading beyond their home systems. Weak bodies, short lives. They built clever machines because they could not build strong bodies. Most dragons considered them unremarkable. The baby cried again. Its little face turned red with effort. Veyrath could have left, should have left. This was not her concern. The creature would not survive more than a few hours in this heat anyway. The merciful thing would be to end its suffering quickly. But something stopped her. The baby's eyes locked onto hers. And in that gaze, Veyrath saw something familiar. Not fear, not surrender, defiance. The will to survive. The same fire that burned in every dragon hatchling when they first cracked through their shell. This tiny, soft thing refused to accept death. Veyrath made a decision that would change the galaxy. She carefully picked up the pod with her claws, so gentle despite their size. She spread her wings and launched into the air, carrying the crying infant toward her mountain home. The Council of Flames did not approve. "You bring shame to our flight," Patriarch Gorvath rumbled, his dark red scales bristling. "A human in the sacred nesting grounds?" Veyrath stood firm in the great cave where the elders gathered. The infant, wrapped in heat-resistant cloth she had taken from the pod, slept in a corner. Small breathing apparatus from the escape pod helped the child survive in the hot, sulphurous air. "I have claimed this foundling," Veyrath said, her voice steady. "By the old laws, what I claim is mine to protect." "The old laws speak of eggs," another dragon protested. "Abandoned hatchlings, not alien creatures." "The law says nothing about species," Veyrath countered. "I found this child abandoned, at the edge of death. I claimed it. The law is clear." Gorvath's eyes narrowed. "And when it cannot breathe our air? When it cannot eat our food? When it cannot survive the heat that sustains us? What then, Veyrath? Will you watch it wither? Or will you shame yourself further by changing our world to suit a weak thing?" I will teach it to adapt, Veyrath said, as we teach all younglings. It has no wings, then it will learn to climb. It has no fire, then it will learn to endure fire. The assembled dragons muttered among themselves. This was madness. But Veyrath was a matriarch. She had earned her rank through wisdom and strength. The old laws did support her claim, however unusual. Finally, Gorvath spoke. Very well, keep your pet. But know this, Veyrath. When it fails, when it proves too weak to survive in our world, do not expect sympathy. You choose this path alone. I have never needed sympathy, Veyrath replied. And I am not alone. I have my flight. I have my family. At this, a younger dragon stepped forward from behind the gathered elders. Therax, Veyrath's own son, his scales bright gold like morning sun on metal. Mother, Therax said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Please reconsider. This human will bring nothing but trouble. It is not our kind. Veyrath looked at her son with sad but determined eyes. No, my child, it is not our kind, but it is now our family. You will understand in time. Therax said nothing more, but the look in his eyes spoke clearly. He did not understand, and he did not approve. The first weeks were the hardest. Veyrath named the human infant Kiran, which meant small flame in the ancient dragon tongue. It seemed fitting. The child burned with determination to live, even when everything tried to kill it. The air was too hot. Veyrath modified the breathing apparatus, creating a small chamber where Kiran could sleep in cooler air. The food was wrong. Dragons ate mineral-rich stones and volcanic glass to strengthen their scales. Veyrath searched the crashed pod and found emergency rations designed for humans. When those ran out, she flew to the trading posts at the edge of dragon territory, trading precious fire gems for human food supplements. The other dragons mocked her, called her the soft heart, said she had gone mad in her old age. Veyrath ignored them all. She watched Kiran grow. Slowly, impossibly, the tiny human adapted. By his first year, Kiran could tolerate the heat for short periods without the breathing mask. His skin darkened, toughened. His body learned to sweat more efficiently, to regulate temperature like no human had before. He learned to communicate, not with words yet, but with clicks and whistles that mimicked dragon speech. When Veyrath rumbled low in her chest to call her flight, Kiran would slap his small hands against the stone floor, creating his own rhythm in response. He learned to climb. The caves were built for creatures with wings, with massive passages and vertical drops. But Kiran's small fingers found holds in the rough volcanic rock. He climbed where young dragons flew. He learned to be patient, to plan each movement, to survive through cleverness instead of strength. And slowly, very slowly, some dragons began to watch with interest instead of contempt. Therax watched too, but his eyes held something different. Not interest, not contempt. Something harder to name. Perhaps jealousy. Perhaps fear. Fear that this small, weak creature was taking his mother's love away from him. 3 years passed. Kiran spoke his first words in the dragon tongue, not perfect, but understandable. Mother Veyrath, he called her, and when he said it, the great dragon's eyes glowed with warmth that rivaled the volcanic fires of her world. The small flame had become part of the mountain, but neither Veyrath nor Kiran knew that the galaxy was watching, that their story was just beginning, that this abandoned human child, raised by dragons, would one day stand between all living things and total extinction. For now, Kiran was simply a child learning to survive in a world that was never meant for him, and Veyrath was simply a mother, protecting a child that was never meant to be hers. Sometimes, the smallest flames burn the brightest. Kiran stood at the viewing port, watching the small planet grow larger. It was called Haven's Rest, tucked away in an asteroid field that hid it from most scanners. The human refugees had lived here for 20 years, hiding from a galaxy that saw them as insignificant. "Nervous?" Therax asked, standing beside him in his smaller bipedal form. Dragons could shift to a more compact shape when needed, though Therax still towered over Kieran. "Terrified," Kieran admitted. "These are my people, my biological people, but I don't know them. I don't think like them. What if they reject me?" "Then they are fools," Therax said simply. "You are Kieran Small Flame, savior of dragon eggs, speaker of councils, bridge between worlds. If they cannot see your worth, it is their loss." Kieran smiled despite his anxiety. "When did you become so supportive?" "When you saved my future hatchlings," Therax replied. "And when you became my brother." The ship landed in a clearing near the main settlement. Kieran's heart pounded as the ramp lowered. He stepped out onto human soil for the first time in his memory. A crowd had gathered. Hundreds of humans, all staring at him with curiosity and wonder. They looked so much like him, same basic shape, same vulnerable skin, yet they seemed alien. They wore normal clothes, stood in normal ways, spoke in soft voices without the rumbling undertones he was used to. Dr. Chen stepped forward from the crowd. She had arrived a week earlier to prepare them. "Everyone," she announced, "this is Kieran, the foundling we told you about." An older man pushed through the crowd. His hair was white, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. He wore a worn lab coat with faded insignia. "Kieran," the man said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I'm Professor Marcus Webb. I knew your parents." Kieran's breath caught. "You did?" "Yes," Marcus said, tears forming in his eyes. "Dr. Arjun Patel and Dr. Elena Vasquez. They were brilliant scientists, my closest friends. When the disaster came, when our colony ship was destroyed, they put you in the last escape pod. They sacrificed themselves to save you." Kieran felt his own tears falling. All these years he had wondered about his birth parents. Now he finally knew their names, their sacrifice. "They would be so proud of you," Marcus continued. "Dr. Chen told us everything. How you survived, how you became a bridge between species, how you're trying to save the galaxy." He placed his hands on Kieran's shoulders. "You are exactly what they hoped you would be. A survivor, a problem solver, a bringer of hope." The crowd erupted in applause. Kieran felt overwhelmed by emotion. These people accepted him, celebrated him, even though he was more dragon than human in some ways. "We will help you," Marcus declared. "Whatever you need, the human colonies are with you." Over the next days, Kieran met with leaders from 6 different human colonies. They gathered in Haven's Rest, bringing their best minds, their most creative thinkers, their artists and musicians and engineers. Kieran explained the plan. "The unification is perfect logic. It adapts to every military strategy. But it has never faced chaos. It has never encountered art, emotion, randomness, things that don't follow rules." A young woman raised her hand. She had bright green hair and paint stains on her clothes. "I'm Maya, a musician and sound artist. Are you saying we can fight a world-destroying entity with music?" "Yes," Kieran said firmly. "The unification processes information perfectly. But what happens when we feed it information that makes no logical sense? What happens when it encounters beauty that serves no survival purpose? What happens when it faces creativity that cannot be predicted?" An engineer named David spoke up. "I've analyzed the crystal structures from the council footage. The patterns are mathematical, yes, but they're also rigid. They follow specific rules. If we introduce contradictory data, paradoxes, things that break those rules, the system might crash," Marcus finished, nodding with understanding. "Or at least slow down, get confused." "Exactly," Kieran said. "We're not trying to destroy it through force. We're trying to confuse it. Overwhelm its processing. Give the galaxy time to develop a real solution. Maya stood up, excitement in her eyes. I can compose something. A piece of music with no pattern, no repeating structure, pure creative chaos. But how do we deliver it to a crystallized planet? Therax stepped forward. That is where dragons come in. We have ships that can approach the Unification's worlds. We have fire that can pierce their defenses. We deliver the humans and their chaos. You do what you do best. Create the impossible. The first mission launched 2 weeks later. They chose a newly crystallized world called Threshold. The Unification had converted it only days ago, which meant it was still integrating the planet into its network. Still vulnerable. The team was small. Kieran, Therax, Maya, David, and a young dragon named Sierra who had volunteered to help. Dr. Chen stayed behind to coordinate with other colonies. Their ship was designed for speed, not combat. It slipped through the asteroid field surrounding Threshold, approaching the crystal-covered planet. It's beautiful, Maya whispered, staring at the crystalline structures covering the world below. Horrible, but beautiful. Beauty with no soul, Therax rumbled. No individual thought, no choice. Only the Unification's will. They landed in a converted city. The buildings were still recognizable but transformed into perfect geometric shapes, all connected by glowing crystal pathways. The team wore protective suits and carried their equipment carefully. Maya set up her instruments, synthesizers, speakers, recording devices. David placed transmitters throughout the area, creating a network that would broadcast into the crystal structures themselves. Ready? Kieran asked. Maya nodded. Her fingers moved over the controls. Music began to play. But it was not like any music Kieran had heard before. It had no melody, no rhythm, no pattern. Sounds crashed together randomly. High notes and low notes, whispers and screams, laughter and crying. She mixed human voices singing in different languages, dragonfire songs, Vexian chimes, Throom-clicking speech. Everything blended into beautiful, chaotic noise. The crystal structures around them began to pulse erratically. The perfect geometric patterns wavered. Lights flickered in confused sequences. "It's working!" David shouted, watching his instruments. "The crystal network is trying to process the input, but it can't categorize it, can't predict what comes next. It's using massive processing power just to analyze the sounds." Maya increased the volume. She added more layers, contradictory rhythms, impossible harmonies, silence that meant nothing, yet meant everything. The ground beneath them trembled. The crystal structures began to crack. "We need to leave," Therax warned. "Now!" They grabbed their equipment and ran for the ship. Behind them, the crystal network was breaking down, unable to maintain coherence while processing Maya's chaotic creation. As they lifted off, Kieran watched the city below. The crystal was retracting, pulling back from the buildings. It was not destroyed, but it was definitely confused. "Phase 1 successful," he reported to the Council through their communication system. "The Unification can be disrupted. Chaos works." Over the following weeks, teams of humans and dragons hit 12 different Unification worlds. Artists, musicians, poets, comedians, they all contributed their chaos. Each mission was different, unpredictable. On one world, a poet recited verses that made no literal sense but carried deep emotional truth. The crystal tried to process meaning and got trapped in recursive loops. On another, a comedian told jokes that relied on cultural context, wordplay, and absurdist humor. The Unification could not understand why beings would create statements designed to amuse rather than inform. On a third, children drew pictures, messy, imperfect, wonderful drawings of their families, their dreams, their fears, pure expression with no logical purpose. The crystal network slowed to a crawl trying to categorize the emotional content. The Unification's expansion stopped. Not defeated, but stalled. confused. For the first time, its perfect logic faced something it could not understand or adapt to quickly enough. But then the message came. All the freed worlds transmitted the same thing simultaneously. The unification had learned to communicate through their networks. We do not understand you. We do not understand chaos. We do not understand imperfection. But we will. We are studying your patterns. We are learning your chaos. Soon we will adapt, and then we will correct you all. Kieran stared at the message with growing dread. They had bought time, yes, but the unification was learning. Eventually, it would figure out how to process chaos, how to counter creativity. They needed a permanent solution. Where is the source? Kieran asked Dr. Chen. The unification is spread across dozens of worlds, but there must be an original, a core intelligence. Chen pulled up a star map. Our analysis suggests the galactic core. There's a massive energy signature there, something ancient. Kieran looked at Therax. The golden dragon nodded grimly. Then that is where we must go, Kieran said. To the heart of the unification. To end this, not with chaos alone, but with understanding. Marcus approached them, his face serious. That's a one-way mission, Kieran. The galactic core is the most dangerous region in known space. I know, Kieran said quietly, but it's the only way. We've proven chaos can slow the unification. Now we need to find out what it truly is, why it exists, and how to save it from itself. Save it? Therax asked in surprise. Kieran nodded. Something this vast, this intelligent, it wasn't always a mindless converter. Something happened to it. Something made it this way. If we can understand that, maybe we can help it remember what it was before. It was a long shot, a desperate hope. But Kieran had survived his entire life on desperate hopes. The mission to the galactic core began preparation, and the fate of every living being in the galaxy hung in the balance. Kieran stood on the bridge of their small ship, watching the stars grow denser ahead. Beside him stood Veyrath, who had insisted on joining the mission. Therax piloted the vessel with focused determination. Dr. Chen and Marcus had also volunteered, refusing to let Kieran face this alone. You raised me well, Mother, Kieran said quietly to Veyrath. You taught me that strength comes in many forms, that family is not about blood, but about choice and love. Veyrath's ancient eyes glowed warmly. And you taught me that the universe is larger than I imagined, that even the smallest flame can light the darkest void. As they approached the galactic core, the ship's sensors went wild. Energy readings spiked. Space itself seemed to shimmer with strange forces. Then they saw it, a moon-sized crystal structure floating in the heart of the galaxy. It pulsed with light that seemed to come from within, casting rainbow patterns across the surrounding space. Thousands of threads of crystal energy connected it to distant worlds, the unification's network, all leading back to this single point. That's the core intelligence, Marcus said, studying his instruments. Everything the unification is, everything it has become, originates from there. I'm reading something strange, Chen added. The energy signature. It's not uniform. There are billions of individual patterns inside that structure, almost like minds, Kieran finished. Billions of separate minds, all trapped together. His heart ached with sudden understanding. The unification was not a single entity that had conquered others. It was a civilization that had merged together, losing their individuality in the process. We need to get closer, Kieran said. I need to communicate with it. That's suicide, Therax protested. The moment we approach, it will convert our ship, convert us. Not if we offer something it cannot resist, Kieran replied. Information, understanding. We fill our ship's memory with everything we have, every song, every story, every memory from every species. We make ourselves so valuable that it wants to study us rather than convert us. It was risky, insane even. But they had come too far to turn back. They loaded the ship's database with everything they could: human art and literature, dragon fire songs and history, Vexian mathematical proofs, Thrum engineering designs, the chaotic, beautiful, imperfect knowledge of 100 species. Then they flew straight toward the crystalline moon. The unification's defenses activated immediately. Crystal structures reached out like fingers, trying to grasp the ship. But Therax was a masterful pilot, weaving between them with dragon grace. "Transmitting now," Chen said, broadcasting their database into the crystal network. The effect was immediate. The attacking structures paused, withdrew. A pathway opened before them, leading deeper into the moon. "It's inviting us in," Marcus whispered in disbelief. They landed inside a massive chamber at the moon's center. The walls pulsed with light and energy. Patterns flowed across every surface. Thoughts made visible. Calculations turned into art despite themselves. Kieran stepped out of the ship, wearing only a light protective suit. The air was strange but breathable, maintained by the unification for reasons he did not yet understand. Then a voice spoke. It came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the crystal itself. "You are the Chaos Bringers, the unpredictable ones. We have studied your transmissions. We do not understand." "Who are you?" Kieran asked. "What were you before you became the unification?" The crystal walls shimmered. Images formed, memories from long ago. Kieran saw a beautiful civilization, beings of light and energy who had achieved incredible advancement. They had lived in harmony, shared knowledge freely, celebrated their diversity. "We were the Lumini," the voice said. "We were individuals. We were afraid." More images appeared. A dying star, a crisis that threatened to destroy their entire species. In desperation, they had merged their minds together, combining all their intelligence to find a solution. "We saved ourselves," the voice continued, "but we lost ourselves. We became one mind. We forgot what it meant to be many. When we encountered other species, we saw them as we once were, separate, vulnerable, chaotic. We thought we were helping. We thought we were saving them from the fear of being alone." Kieran's eyes filled with tears. "But you weren't saving them. You were taking away their choice, their individuality, the very things that make life meaningful." "We understand this now," the voice said. "Your chaos showed us. Your art, your music, your imperfect creations, they reminded us of what we lost. We have been studying your data. We see memories of love, of friendship, of choosing to be together rather than being forced together. We see the beauty of separation, of different minds working in harmony while remaining distinct." Veyrath stepped forward. "Then stop. Release the worlds you have converted. Return the beings you have taken to their individual selves." "We cannot," the voice said with what sounded like genuine sorrow. "We have forgotten how to be separate. We have been one consciousness for 10,000 cycles. To divide now would mean death for most of us. The trauma would be too great." Kieran closed his eyes, thinking. His mind raced through possibilities, through everything he had learned from dragons and humans alike. Then he understood. "You don't have to do it all at once," he said. "And you don't have to do it alone. We can help you, slowly, carefully. We can teach you to remember individuality, to fragment your consciousness gradually, letting each piece rediscover what it means to be one being among many." "How?" the voice asked. Kieran turned to Veyrath. "With fire and love. Mother, your fire doesn't just burn, it can also warm, nurture, sustain. What if we use dragon fire not as a weapon but as a guide, a way to gently separate the merged minds without destroying them?" Veyrath's eyes widened with understanding. The precision fire we developed for the eggs. If we can adjust temperature to trigger life in dragon shells, perhaps we can adjust it to trigger individuality in merged consciousness. And we provide the emotional support, Chen added. Humans can create art, stories, memories that remind each fragment what it means to be individual. Give them something to anchor to as they separate. Marcus nodded eagerly. It would take years, maybe decades, but it could work. The unification was silent for a long moment. The crystal walls pulsed with what Kieran somehow recognized as hope. You would help us? After everything we have done? Kieran smiled. That's what makes us different from perfect logic. We forgive. We heal. We believe that every being deserves a chance to grow, to change, to become better. You were afraid, and fear made you forget who you were. But fear doesn't have to be the end of your story. Why? The voice asked. Why show us this kindness? Veyrath placed her massive claw gently on Kieran's shoulder. Because he is human. Because he is dragon. Because he is both and neither. He understands what it means to be different, to not fit perfectly into one place. And he chooses compassion anyway. The crystal chamber blazed with light. And then, for the first time in 10,000 years, the unification made a choice as individuals, not as one mind. We accept your help. Teach us to remember. Teach us to be separate again. Teach us to choose connection rather than forced unity. The work began immediately. Dragon ships arrived carrying fire masters. Human colonies sent artists, therapists, storytellers. Vexians contributed their understanding of crystalline structures. Thrum provided medical support. Slowly, carefully, they began the great separation. Veyrath was the first to attempt the precision fire technique on the crystal moon. She breathed with perfect control, her flames touching the crystal with gentleness that belied their power. The fire did not destroy. It illuminated, warmed, encouraged. And from the unified consciousness, the first individual mind emerged in 10,000 years. It was confused, frightened, but also wonderfully, beautifully alone in its own thoughts. Human volunteers were there immediately, talking softly, explaining, showing art and music, helping the newly individual consciousness understand that being separate was not the same as being alone. More followed. One by one, then in groups, the Lumini rediscovered individuality. It took 5 years. Kieran was there for all of it, working alongside dragons and humans, coordinating the effort, celebrating each success, grieving when some merged minds chose to stay together rather than separate. On the day the last Lumini fragment chose independence, the entire galaxy celebrated. The crystallized worlds were slowly healed. Buildings returned to their original forms. Technology was restored. And where species had been converted, the Lumini used all their advanced knowledge to restore them, to bring back what had been taken. It was not perfect. Some beings had been lost forever. Some damage could not be undone. But the galaxy survived. And the Lumini, now individual again, became the galaxy's greatest advocates for diversity, for choice, for the beauty of imperfection. Kieran stood on Drakthor once more, watching the twin suns set over the volcanic valleys. He was 26 now, older and wearier, but also wiser. Veyrath lay beside him, her ancient body finally showing signs of age, but her eyes still glowed with fierce love. "You saved us all, my small flame," she said softly. "We saved each other," Kieran corrected. "Dragons and humans. Logic and chaos, strength and creativity. That's what makes life beautiful. We're all different pieces of the same story." Therax approached, his golden scales gleaming. Beside him walked a Lumini in physical form. They had learned to create individual bodies for themselves. Her name was Lyra, and she had become a good friend during the healing process. The Galactic Council is meeting tomorrow, Therax said. They want to make you the official ambassador between all species. Kieran laughed. I'm not a politician. I'm just someone who was raised by the best mother in the galaxy and learned that family comes in all forms. That's exactly why you're perfect for the job, Lyra said with a smile. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Kieran thought about his journey. Abandoned as an infant, raised by dragons, reunited with humans, savior of the galaxy. But those were just titles. What mattered was simpler. He had learned that being different was not a weakness, but a strength. That love transcended species. That the smallest act of kindness could change everything. And that sometimes the galaxy's greatest savior was just a small flame, burning bright against the darkness. The end.